Welcome to Capital City Paranormal-ish, where we explore the craziest and creepiest paranormal TikToks. So sit back and get ready to have your reality questioned. Good evening, my freaky family. Welcome to Capital City Paranormal-ish, where we explore the strangest and creepiest paranormal TikToks trending on the internet. Although tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to touch a little bit more of a serious note, and we're going to touch on the subject of Alberta possibly considering separation from Canada. It's kind of a soft spot for me, as I am an Albertan, and I have been for most of my life. But I'm not really sure where I sit on it, because I'm not sure that I know all of the facts involved in making such an important decision. So I figured it would be a good thing for me to put together something that would give different perspectives of what's going on, and maybe help other people, come to the decision they want to be at. I don't think I want to be separate from Canada at all, but I think it's important to look at all the facts, so that's what we're going to try and do tonight, and let's do this. And be sure to put any of your feelings down in the comments, and if you are new here, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, so show us the support and the love, so we can keep bringing you more videos like this. And with that being said, let's get on with the show.
Alberta is stronger inside Canada than outside of Canada. The former UCP finance minister said the Premier's dream of separation would destroy Alberta's economy. Travis Taves called her plan, quote, dangerous for the province, and said it would, quote, simply undermine investment. In Quebec, separatism destroyed Montreal's economy, killed jobs and investments, and hurt the province. So instead of standing up for a strong Canada, the Premier's actions will drive away investment and destroy our economy. Why would the Premier risk Alberta's prosperity at a time when we're already under attack from President Trump?
All we have been asking for is for the federal government to honor the Constitution, which gives us the jurisdiction to develop our resources, gives us the jurisdiction to manage the power grid. The members opposite wanted to hand everything over to the federal government to manage.
Albertans reject this Premier's separatism, and politicians of all stripes know that it is political suicide to say out loud that they are a separatist. But what did this Premier and her government do? She tabled terrible elections laws that everyone immediately looked at and said, this is to facilitate separatism.
That's right.
She calls it a citizen-led initiative, but Albertans know what's going on. The government is enabling a referendum to have Alberta leave Canada. Why would the Premier rewrite already sound election laws just to make it easier to have a separation referendum when she knows it will damage Alberta?
The bastion of socialism, California, has actually been the motivator for me in looking at how we might change our citizen initiative legislation.
Mr. Speaker, Albertans are proud Canadians.
That's right.
With no interest of adopting U.S.-style healthcare or U.S.-style election laws. Or the UCP party president was on right-wing Facebook last night, writing that the Premier, with this law, is listening to extreme far-right and that they will get their referendum on independence. Why is the Premier only willing to listen to people who want to separate from Canada rather than the vast majority of Albertans who stand for a united Canada?
Changes to these laws have been in place or in the works for a number of months. It was actually in the mandate letter from my Justice Minister to look at an Elections Act reform so that we could identify some issues that needed to be changed. It's actually a pretty substantive piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, and one of the issues that we had heard was to address the thresholds for recall, to address the thresholds for citizen initiative, and that's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We believe in the wisdom of the people. We believe that they can identify issues, put them forward for fair consideration by their fellow citizens, and we invite the members opposite to start petition campaigns.
Alberta should be shoulder to shoulder with every other Canadian to build up Canada, not tear it down. But this government refuses to stand with Canada. For years, they've attacked our country. They do not value the institutions we share as Canadians. They have attacked public health care, public education, the CPP, amongst others. And now, after introducing legislation to make it easier to separate, it must be asked, why does the Premier want Alberta to leave Canada?
Speaker, I may ask the member opposite why it is that they want Alberta to fail. The reason why we have tension in this country is because the federal Liberal NDP coalition passed terrible policy that targeted our province, targeted our industry.
I don't know, fam. I guess I have been told quite a bit throughout my life that Alberta does get hit hard because of the oil and all of the minerals and whatnot that we have here. I'm not sure how much exactly of that is true, but I mean, we shouldn't be taking a hit if it's, if we don't deserve it, especially if we are putting so much into the economy. We should be able to feel those, breaks and freedoms from that. In my opinion, I don't know. I'm definitely going to start doing more research on the matter and get more politically involved because things are getting pretty serious. So let me know what you think down in the comments.
Federal income tax. There'd be no GST. There'd be no excise tax. There'd be no carbon tax. There'd be no more equalization payments where taxes, pension, and UI benefits included, we send $70 billion plus a year to Ottawa and get less than $35 billion a year back from the rest of Canada, or Confederation as it's called. So imagine the wealth and the prosperity of this province with all of that money remaining in the province, remaining in the provincial economy. Imagine Alberta with control of its own immigration, so that where we have cities that don't have enough water, don't have enough electricity, don't have enough housing, that we can say, hang on, no vacancy, time out, until we sort out all the people that are presently here and we accommodate everybody that's here and have a sensible immigration policy as opposed to what we've been dealing with. Imagine in Alberta where we're no longer being subject to arbitrary federal regulations because somebody in Ottawa doesn't like the shape of somebody's hunting rifle, that they just automatically declare all of our hunting rifles to be prohibited, illegal, and subject to seizure to be shipped to the front lines in the war of Ukraine, and other stupid ideas that have come out of Ottawa in the last several years. So I'm confident on those ideas alone, getting rid of, literally if we get rid of all federal taxation in Alberta, the take-home pay and the disposable income of every Albertan will more than double. Think about the fact that every time a working man or woman goes to the pump to fill up their truck, instead of paying $1.60 for diesel, they're paying 80 cents, which is what it should be. I mean, all of these things need to be explained to the public at large to truly internalize what the benefits from an economic perspective of an independent Alberta will be. As well as and this is why we're going to Washington to talk to the U.S. administration with regard to their support for Alberta independence. From a U.S. perspective, why wouldn't they support Alberta independence? President Trump recently announced at the joint session of Congress that he was fully in support of self-determination for Greenland. Surely we can hope that President Trump will also support self-determination for Alberta, because clearly it's in the U.S. interest to have a secure energy supply that isn't being subject to arbitrary regulation, production caps, emission caps, and all of these other things that Ottawa arbitrarily imposes on Alberta out of some misguided notion that anything we do in Canada is going to somehow offset all of the CO2 increases being put out by India and China, which dwarf all of our CO2 savings in Alberta and Canada on an annualized basis. So all of these things would be dealt with within a common sense Commonwealth of Alberta, operating as an independent nation, where we're no longer subject to the idiotic whims of politicians in Ottawa who are influenced by people that belong to the investment club called the World Economic Forum, whose main purpose is simply to siphon tax dollars out of the hardworking pockets of the citizens of Alberta for the benefit of many of their get-rich-quick schemes like battery plants in Ontario and bug protein plants and all of the other foolishness that we've seen Alberta tax dollars going to subsidize. So for me, I see that this project is eminently sensible. I think we have more than enough support for it. Certainly the present government in Edmonton, the Daniel Smith's government, realizes that if there's 37% support for independence amongst the population at large, the support for independence within the UCP membership likely exceeds 60%. So, I think on that basis, the odds of having a referendum this year, thanks to Premier Smith, being forthright and coming forward and putting together a clear list of conditions for Alberta to remain in Canada, to be considered by the future federal government, to be decided, again, probably without Alberta's input on April 28th, that we are going to have an opportunity to have a referendum this year. And I'm sure with all of us working together, we can finally have what we've all been working towards, which is a free and independent Alberta. So that's our goal.
You see, fam, that's what I mean. Separating from Canada is not something that I thought we were heading towards or we were working towards. I kind of love Canada. I mean, I love Alberta too. It's where I live, but I don't know, Canada holds a special place in my heart. I don't know, I can't see. So far, I can't really justify leaving Canada. Yeah, you don't turn your back on your country. That's like turning your back on your mother or your father or something. I think. I don't know. Yeah, this is a pretty serious thing. I think it's something we should all take very careful consideration of before we come to any decisions, really. Here's the next video.
So the Supreme Court of Canada was asked to look at, is there a constitutional pathway for a province to leave Canada and become its own independent sovereign nation or join another nation? And the Supreme Court of Canada said yes. And they said what's required is a clear referendum, a referendum with a clear question, with a clear majority. And if a clear majority of the citizens vote in a referendum, a legally sanctioned referendum, to leave Canada and become their own sovereign, then it places each other province and First Nations, Aboriginal groups, and the federal government under a positive legal duty to enter into negotiations for the terms of that separation.
As the First Minister of Alberta, the notion that because the national election didn't go the way a lot of people in your province wanted, that it becomes a cause for separation.
Well, I have always said that I support Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada, and I think that is the viewpoint of many of the premiers, is that they want the Constitution to be respected. They want to be able to have local decision making. They want the environmental process to be at the provincial level. So I'm not alone in that. We have a process in our province where you have citizen-initiated referenda. If you have a certain number of signatures on a petition, issues can be put forward. If there is an appetite for that kind of conversation, that would be the avenue for it. But it's not something that our government would be putting forward. I believe that we've got to try to be on Team Canada, but my view has always been that Team Canada has to show that they're on Team Alberta too. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do that reset. I'm open-minded about it. I'm going to be working on that for the next number of months, but the proof will be in the action, not the talk.
Well, I think so far I sit in agreement with that I think we should probably try and solve our issues within Canada, not even being so much a sovereign Alberta. And I think we should keep loyalties to Canada and work our problems out with the federal government at the provincial levels. And, I think it's something the federal government should really also take into careful consideration with the solutions that they're, maybe going to put forward to rectify this whole situation. I mean, uh, they are the federal government. They are supposedly the stronghold of the country, so really protect your provinces and be fair with your provinces, I think, is a very important thing. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments and where you sit so far on this whole thing. Here's the next video, guys. Girls, guys and girls. Sorry. Anyways, here we go.
So we are introducing Bill 54, which is the Election Statutes Amendment Act, to make elections at every level in Alberta more transparent and democratic.
Okay, that was Premier Danielle Smith, and let's talk about Bill 54. It had its first reading in the legislature yesterday. I am going to talk about the changes to the citizen-initiated referendum portion of the bill later in the video. But this bill does a lot more than that. So if you live in Alberta, I recommend that you watch this video. If you don't have time to watch it now, save it and come back to it later. The bill is 254 pages. I've read the entire thing, so you don't have to, but if you want to read it, I'm going to send it out tonight in my news roundup. The link is in my bio if you want to sign up for that. I'm not going to go over all the changes in the bill, but I'm going to go over the ones that I think are most important for you to know about. Number one is that if you're Indigenous, voting provisions are scaled back. Under Alberta's previous election laws, the Chief Electoral Officer had to consult with First Nation band council members, as well as Métis settlement councils when setting up voting locations across the province. Specifically, locations set up on reserves or in settlements. This was meant to respect Indigenous governance as well as to make sure that voting was accessible to all First Nations communities. Bill 54 dramatically changes that. It now says that the Chief Electoral Officer may consult, but only if they choose to, meaning that consultation is not mandatory. Also, references to Indian reserves or Métis settlements have been removed or changed with more generic language. And this creates kind of a legal gray area as to whether they need to set up voting locations in those areas. Number two is where you can vote, how you can vote, and what you need to vote is also changing. Previously, in Alberta provincial elections, you could cast your ballot in the early voting phase at any polling station across the province. Meaning if you lived in Edmonton but you happened to be working in Calgary when advance voting was taking place, you could vote in Calgary. Now you won't be able to do that. Now during the advance voting portion, you will only be allowed to vote in your electoral district. Voter ID is also going to be required if the bill is passed, meaning you will no longer be able to vouch for somebody if they don't have ID. Now this was something that Stephen Harper on the federal level tried to do back in 2014. Many say it violated Section 3 of Canada's charter rights, but the bill was later repealed in 2018 by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau before it could make it to the courts to rule on it. Section 3 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada states that every citizen of Canada has the right to vote in an election of members of the House of Commons or of a legislative assembly and to be qualified for membership therein. In 2002, the Supreme Court struck down a law that would have banned prisoners from voting, stating the right to vote is fundamental to our democracy and the rule of law. It's also important to note that should this law be challenged in court and ruled as unconstitutional, the notwithstanding clause will not be able to apply to this specific charter right. The bill also gives the provincial government more powers to move or cancel elections citing emergencies. And again, the language is very vague on what is considered to be an emergency. But let's talk about the changes to the citizen-initiated referendum rules. As it stands right now, if you want to ask a specific question to Alberta residents in a voting process, which is called a referendum, you can do so by collecting a certain number of signatures. Currently, for that to happen, you need 20% of the electorate, meaning 20% of all registered voters within Alberta. During the last provincial election, there was just shy of 3 million eligible voters within Alberta, meaning you would need to collect around 600,000 signatures, but also those signatures would have to come from 2/3 of the electoral districts. There are 87 electoral districts in Alberta provincially, meaning that you would need signatures from 58 of those districts. However, under Bill 54, this would dramatically change. You would only need to get signatures of 10% of the number of voters within the last provincial election. There was just shy of 1.8 million voters in the last provincial election, meaning you would only need to collect just shy of 180,000 signatures. But it also eliminates the need for those signatures to come from 2/3 of the electoral districts. meaning they could collect those signatures in the province from one very specific area. Let me know what you think in the comments about this bill, and if you want to read it again, I will email it out in my news roundup tonight.
Well, going with what he said, I would have to say that it does seem to be that Danielle Smith is paving the way for Alberta to leave Canada. I know she states her objective is otherwise, but I mean, making those changes to that bill would seem to support otherwise. So I think it should stay 20% at the very minimum, and also I think it should be over a certain portion of the whole electoral areas, because you need opinions from everybody all around the province. It can't just be in one general locale. I think that's bias, and it's really easy to focus, focus your attention on that one specific area just to get all those people in that area. No, I think it should be spread out between all of Alberta and should be involved in such a decision because it involves every Albertan. So, yeah, what's your opinions on that? And yeah, here's the next video.
As Mark Carney takes a minority red government to Ottawa, across the map, some are feeling blue.
Albertans are hurt and betrayed. That's how I think Albertans are feeling.
Premier Danielle Smith was pulling for a Conservative clean sweep, and she almost got it in Alberta. Here, 34 of 37 possible seats went to Pierre Poilievre's team. But when all is said and done nationally, it won't be Poilievre. Smith will be pitching her energy and equalization ideas too.
We want to be able to have Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada. But we also would like to see Team Canada be on Team Alberta for once.
Some insist that's no longer possible.
This is now a completely abusive relationship. And our only alternative, mediation has failed. And so our only alternative is to now file for a divorce from Canada.
Led by a former UCP operative, the Republican Party of Alberta is pushing for a way out.
Alberta needs a binding independence referendum. It needs to set the boundaries clear with the rest of Canada. That Confederation is broken. It isn't working.
Experts have almost unanimously laughed off the chance of the province separating, but the chance of holding a public vote is improving. An act tabled Tuesday will soon make it easier for Albertans to bring forward referendum ideas by lowering the number of petitioner signatures needed.
If citizens want to put a question on a ballot and get enough of their fellow citizens to sign that petition, then those questions will be put forward.
Here's how Alberta is handling Carney's Liberal win. And spoiler alert, they're not happy about it. And remember, Conservatives won nearly all 37 of those federal seats in Alberta. On Tuesday afternoon, just after the win, Premier Smith announced significant changes to the province's election laws. She says she's not calling for Alberta to separate from Canada, but she's making it easier for regular people to start the conversation if they want. Some significant changes include: 1, it's now easier to start referendums and recall politicians. Though a longer process, it'll now take less signatures to start a province-wide vote. Next, companies and unions can now donate up to $5,000 to political parties or candidates. This announcement came shortly after she stated, "While Albertans are proud Canadians, we will no longer tolerate having our industries threatened and our resources landlocked by Ottawa." A recent poll just before the elections showed that 30% of Albertans want to leave Canada if Liberals win the election. British Columbians, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments.
Well, fam, I don't know, but I think so far with what I've seen and listened to, my loyalty is still to Canada. I don't think it's wise to separate. I don't think it does anybody any good. And I think it's something we should be able to work out in-house, I mean, are we not mature enough to reach fair agreements? Well, apparently, looking at Russia and Ukraine on another subject, doesn't seem like maybe countries are in a position to make have responsible decision making and conflict resolution. So, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting, I think. What do you guys think? Here's the next video.
Yes, please.
Last week, I spent some time with two government officials from Canada. And I was asking them how realistic is it that Canada would be the 51st state.
Yeah.
And they told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true. A lot of people in Canada are liking becoming our beautiful, cherished 51st state. They'll have to pay much lower taxes. They'll have the ultimate security. You know, they don't pay very much for security right now because they rely on us, which is really unfair to us. They make cars that we could make, and they send them back into the United States. They make a lot of things, including the sending of oil and everything. We don't need their oil. We don't need their lumber. In fact, we're going to be freeing up, and I've asked Howard Lutnick to get that done with Lee and everybody, Lee Zeldin, environmental. We're freeing up our forests. We're going to be able to take down trees. Right now, you know, we're so restricted environmentally. We're going to be freeing it up with an emergency order. We have an emergency order, and we're going to be freeing up our forests. We have more forests than almost anybody, and great lumber, great trees. We don't need anybody's trees. We don't need trees from Canada or anybody else. In fact, we have to put the slits, as they call them, the area, you know, 50.
To every freedom-loving Canadian out there, move to Alberta and help us separate. To every liberal freaking leech that's in Alberta right now, get the fuck out. Move to Vancouver, move to Toronto, move to Montreal. Go find your own. And get the fuck out of Alberta. You don't want to separate. All the rest of us do. We are not the same.
So it's already happening. Alberta's trying to separate. It's not even been 24 hours.
We are expanding opportunities for Albertans to be involved in direct democracy by making changes to the threshold needed for successful citizens' initiatives. The signature collection time for citizens' initiatives will be extended from 90 days to 120 days. We are also improving the process by setting the threshold to be 10% of the number of eligible voters who participated in the last general election, as opposed to being either 10 or 20% of total registered voters.
Premier Danielle Smith tabled a bill on constitutional referendum, which would allow Alberta to separate quicker if they got the votes. Now, I'm not saying this bill will pass or Alberta will be even able to separate, because I know it's a long process. What I'm worried about is if Trump gets this in his radar. If you thought things were bad from Trump having a conversation with Trudeau, which led to him saying he's Governor Trudeau and now trolling about the 51st state, how much of a panic do you think Trump's going to cause when he figures out or hears that Alberta wants to separate or is flirting with the idea? How much chaos is that going to cause in Canada? And with regards to the tariffs, how much leverage do you think Trump will have if he's flirting with the Alberta separatists? This is all going to be a giant shit show, and I'm here for it. I'm just, at this point, I'm mentally checked out. There's only so many times you can do the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect different results. So I've just accepted the madhouse, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can take it as lightheartedly as he can. And I'm not going to be willing to accept the madhouse, There's probably not a whole lot I can do about it, but refuse to participate in such endeavors anyways. But, yeah, I don't think it's anybody's best interest for Alberta to separate from Canada. I really don't. What do you think? Here's the next video.
I rise today as a proud Nahil. In a fit of political rage, the Premier introduced a bill that would make it easier to launch Alberta into a separatist crisis. as if threatening to break up Canada was just another wedge issue. Why now? Why, in the middle of rising costs and global instability, would this Premier choose the path of chaos? Separatism creates uncertainty. It drives away investment, it hurts workers, it hurts the oil and gas sector, just like Trump and his reckless tariffs. But here's what the Premier won't say. First Nations must consent to any talk of separation, full stop. Our inherent right and jurisdiction over these lands predate the creation of Alberta. We are signatories to Treaty 6, 7, and 8 made with the Crown, not with the province. The treaties are binding. They must be respected. And no Premier, no matter how loud and reckless, can erase that. The Supreme Court of Canada has already ruled no province can unilaterally separate, and any path to separation must include meaningful negotiation with First Nations, something this government has no mandate, no plan, and no legitimacy to do. Mr. Speaker, First Nations in Alberta want our treaties honored. We want our sovereignty respected, and we do not want to become the 51st state. There are many like me, Nehiwak, First Nations people, and proud Albertans who feel the same way. And I will take the lead of the late Elijah Harper. I will never, ever vote for separatism, because this is and always will be Indian land.
Well, my freaky fam, we've reached the end of another video. Hopefully this video provided you with some insights and different perspectives as to the issue of Alberta separating from Canada, and maybe it can, get you a little bit closer to reaching a point where something might make it easier for you to come to some sort of a decision. I don't know. This is a pretty serious issue, I think, and I think all Canadians should take it seriously. So until the next time, hit the subscribe button and see you in the next video.